Picture this, a bustling city in the full swing of daily life, children playing in the streets, merchants selling their goods, families sharing meals, and then, in one unimaginable moment, everything stops. Not metaphorically, not gradually, but suddenly, completely, as if someone pressed pause on the entire world. That is the breathtaking reality of the accidental time capsules. We're about to explore cities and communities preserved not by careful planning, but by catastrophe. These places offer us something rare and profound, a chance to step directly into the past, to walk through homes abandoned mid-meal, to witness art left unfinished, to see life exactly as it was lived centuries or even millennia ago. It's a haunting, humbling thought that disaster, as devastating as it is, can sometimes freeze a moment so perfectly that it becomes a gift to the future. What if I told you that some of history's greatest tragedies have become archaeology's greatest treasures? From the ash-buried streets of Pompeii to the waterlogged ruins of sunken ports, cataclysmic events, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, floods have inadvertently acted as guardians of history. They've sealed away entire worlds, protecting them from the erosion of time, the reach of looters, and the slow fade of memory. In doing so, they've given us back something we thought was lost forever: intimate, tangible connections to people who lived, loved, and dreamed long before we were born. These aren't just ruins, they're time machines, and in this video, we're going to journey through them together. We'll wander through homes where the bread is still in the oven, temples where prayers seem to hang in the air, and streets where footsteps were suddenly silenced. We'll meet the people, not as abstract historical figures, but as individuals caught in a single, defining moment. And along the way, we'll uncover not just how these cities were preserved, but why they matter so deeply to us today. This is a story about resilience, curiosity, and the incredible serendipity that allows us to touch the past. So settle in, open your mind, and let's step into these frozen moments in history. You're about to see the past in a way you never thought possible. It's a strange and sobering truth that the very forces capable of erasing a civilization from the map can also, under the right circumstances, act as its eternal guardians. Think about the normal process of history for a moment. Cities don't just vanish, they fade. They are dismantled for building materials, built over by new generations, or slowly worn down by wind and rain until only the most durable stones remain. We're left with fragments, with puzzles where most of the pieces are missing, but a cataclysm, a sudden, overwhelming disaster that changes everything. It doesn't just destroy, it encapsulates. It captures a moment in a sealed environment, creating conditions so unique that they practically defy the natural order of decay. The secret lies in the swift and complete removal of the very things that cause decomposition: oxygen, moisture, and biological activity. A volcanic eruption, for instance, doesn't just bury a town in dust. It smothers it in a thick, hot blanket of ash that seals out air and moisture, creating an anaerobic environment where bacteria and other microorganisms simply cannot survive. Without these tiny agents of decay, organic materials that would normally rot away in a matter of years, wooden furniture, cloth, food, even the bodies of the victims, are instead preserved in stunning detail for centuries. It's a form of natural mummification on a city-wide scale. Water, often a symbol of erosion and loss, can perform a similar miracle. When a city sinks suddenly, perhaps due to an earthquake liquefying the ground beneath it, the sediment-rich water that rushes in to cover it can act as a perfect preservative. The low oxygen environment at the bottom of a sea or lake halts decay, while layers of silt protect structures from the destructive force of currents. This is how we find ancient shipwrecks with their cargo holds still full, or temples with their painted walls still bright, as if they were submerged only yesterday. The very element that claimed them becomes their protector, locking them away in a silent, dark vault. And then there is the cold. In the high mountains or the frozen tundra, ice acts as nature's ultimate deep freezer. A sudden avalanche or a rapid temperature drop can encase a person or a settlement in ice, slowing biological processes to a near standstill. The results are so precise that we can analyze the last meal in a stomach, identify the types of pollen on a shirt, or study the intricate patterns of a tattoo on skin that has been frozen for thousands of years. Each of these methods, ash, water, ice, or even the acidic, oxygen-poor conditions of a peat bog, creates a different kind of time capsule, each with its own strengths in preserving specific aspects of the past. This paradoxical relationship between destruction and preservation forces us to expand our understanding of these tragic events. They are not merely endpoints, they are also moments of extraordinary transition. A bustling city becomes a snapshot. A horrific tragedy becomes an unparalleled historical record. The same event that ended countless lives has, centuries later, given those lives a voice, allowing us to hear their stories with a clarity we never thought possible. This delicate, almost poetic balance is what makes these sites so profoundly powerful. They are monuments to both human fragility and incredible resilience, all sealed by the unpredictable hand of nature. And with that understanding, we can now turn to the most iconic example of this phenomenon, a city whose name is synonymous with sudden preservation. Of all the accidental time capsules left to us by history, none captures the imagination quite like Pompeii. It is the quintessential example, the one that springs to mind whenever we try to picture a moment frozen by disaster. On an ordinary day in 79 AD, this thriving Roman city was a hub of commerce and daily life. Then, without warning, Mount Vesuvius erupted. It was not a simple lava flow. The mountain unleashed a cataclysmic column of superheated gas, pumice, and volcanic ash that rained down on the city for hours, followed by searing pyroclastic flows that swept down its slopes. The result was a burial so swift and so complete that it sealed the city away from the world for nearly 17 centuries, creating a preservation so perfect it borders on the miraculous. What makes Pompeii so extraordinary is the breathtaking intimacy of the snapshot it provides. This isn't just a city of stone foundations and crumbling walls. This is a city interrupted. Step into a bakery and you will find loaves of bread, carbonized but still recognizably round, left in the oven where they were baking that morning. Walk through a home and vibrant frescoes depicting myths and family life adorn the walls, their colors still stunningly vivid. Graffiti is scrawled on public buildings, advertising gladiator games or declaring political support, the casual thoughts of everyday people immortalized in stone. You can see the ruts worn into the streets by chariot wheels and stepstones placed for pedestrians to cross without getting their feet wet. It is a level of detail that transforms abstract history into tangible, relatable human experience. But the most poignant and indeed haunting connections to the people of Pompeii are the plaster casts of the victims. As the ash and pumice settled, it hardened around the bodies of those who did not escape. Over the centuries, the organic material of their bodies decayed, leaving perfect, hollow molds in the compacted ash. 19th century archaeologists had the brilliant idea of pouring plaster into these cavities. When the surrounding material was carefully chipped away, they revealed the exact forms of the people in their final moments. We see a man crouching, covering his face with his hands. A woman clutches precious jewelry. A group huddles together, seeking shelter that could not save them. A dog contorted in agony. These are not statues, they are the negative space of human tragedy, a silent testament to the sheer terror of that day. They force us to confront the individual lives lost, making the scale of the disaster heartbreakingly personal. Beyond the human drama, the sheer completeness of Pompeii's preservation has made it an archaeological treasure trove of unparalleled importance. It offers a complete cross-section of a Roman municipium, a bustling middle-class city. We can study its sophisticated water system with lead pipes, its numerous shops and taverns, its grand amphitheater, and its public baths. The artifacts found there, from surgical instruments and financial records to fish sauce and carbonized fruit, paint a comprehensive picture of Roman economy, social structure, technology, and diet. It provides a verified benchmark for understanding the first-century Roman world, against which all other sites are compared. Pompeii is more than a ruin. It is a library of Roman life, its pages written not on papyrus, but in ash and anguish, waiting centuries for us to learn how to read them. While Pompeii offers a stunningly complete picture of a bustling Roman commercial center, its sister city Herculaneum presents a different, and in many ways even more astonishing, window into the ancient world. Buried by the very same eruption of Vesuvius, Herculaneum's fate was sealed not by a slow, suffocating fall of pumice and ash, but by a series of devastating pyroclastic surges. These waves of superheated gas and fine ash, racing down the mountain at nearly 100 miles per hour and reaching temperatures over 900 degrees Fahrenheit, instantly and completely engulfed the city. This horrifyingly violent process is what created its unique state of preservation, one that in certain aspects surpasses even that of its famous neighbor. The key difference lies in the effect of that immense heat. Where Pompeii was buried and sealed, Herculaneum was essentially baked. The pyroclastic material carbonized organic matter, a process that sounds destructive but actually acted as a phenomenal preservative. In Pompeii, woodwork largely rotted away over time, leaving only hollow spaces and impressions. In Herculaneum, wooden objects were transformed into a durable, charcoal-like substance, retaining their exact shape and detail. We can see this in everything from the beams and shutters of houses to intricate pieces of furniture, including beds, tables, and even a perfectly preserved baby's crib. This level of survival for everyday wooden items is almost unheard of at archaeological sites from this period, offering an unparalleled look at Roman carpentry and domestic life. Perhaps the most breathtaking discovery from this carbonization process is the Villa dei Papyri, a magnificent seaside estate that housed an extensive library of papyrus scrolls. The intense heat carbonized these delicate scrolls, turning them into blackened, brittle lumps that were long thought to be unreadable lumps of charcoal. For centuries they were, but today, with advanced technologies like multi-spectral imaging and X-ray phase contrast tomography, scientists are beginning to virtually unroll these scrolls and decipher their texts without ever physically touching them. This is a literal unburning of the library, offering the potential to recover lost works of literature and philosophy from the ancient world. A possibility that makes Herculaneum one of the most exciting ongoing archaeological projects on the planet. The human story in Herculaneum is also told differently. The pyroclastic surges were so intensely hot that they vaporized soft tissue instantly. Unlike Pompeii, there are no poignant plaster casts here. Instead, archaeologists have found skeletal remains, often clustered together in boathouses along what was then the shoreline, where hundreds of people had fled in a desperate and ultimately futile attempt to escape by sea. The study of these bones provides a different kind of intimate detail. Analysis reveals information about diet, health, and even occupations. For instance, the remains of one man showed skeletal adaptations consistent with being a fisherman, while studies of women's bones have provided insights into nutrition and childbirth in the Roman world. These are not anonymous victims. Science is allowing their individual life stories to be told from their very skeletons. The city itself reflects a different social stratum than Pompeii. Herculaneum was widely considered a resort town, a preferred retreat for wealthy Roman senators and elites seeking fresh sea air and stunning views of the Bay of Naples. This affluence is immediately apparent in the architecture. The houses are grander, often featuring lavish marble finishes, intricate mosaic floors, and elaborate colonnaded gardens. The public infrastructure was also more sophisticated, with wider streets and a more complex underground drainage system. Walking through Herculaneum feels like stepping into a more luxurious, more private world than the bustling, shop-lined streets of Pompeii. It provides a crucial counterpoint, showing us not just how Romans lived, but how the most privileged among them lived in extraordinary comfort and style, a lifestyle frozen in a single, cataclysmic moment. But while the Roman world offers us these profound glimpses into a single catastrophic day, the story of cataclysmic preservation stretches back much, much further in time, to a civilization that flourished over 1,000 years before the founding of Rome. Journey with me now to the stunningly beautiful Greek island of Santorini, with its whitewashed buildings and blue-domed churches perched atop dramatic cliffs. Those iconic cliffs are not just a picturesque backdrop for tourists, they are the very walls of a colossal volcanic caldera, the remnants of one of the most violent eruptions in human history. And buried deep within that volcanic rock lies one of archaeology's most magnificent treasures, the lost city of Akrotiri, often called the Minoan Pompeii. This comparison, while useful, doesn't quite capture the full wonder of Akrotiri. For starters, this cataclysm occurred around the year 1600 BC, a full 17 centuries before Vesuvius buried its victims. The society that built Akrotiri was not Roman. It was Minoan, a sophisticated and enigmatic Bronze Age culture centered on the island of Crete, named for the legendary King Minos and his labyrinthine palace. Akrotiri was not a Roman municipium or a luxury resort. It was a thriving, prosperous port city within the Minoan sphere of influence, a crucial hub in a vast trade network that stretched across the Mediterranean. And perhaps most strikingly, unlike Pompeii, there is a compelling and hopeful absence at Akrotiri's heart. No human remains have been discovered. The evidence strongly suggests that the inhabitants had ample warning, likely a series of earthquakes and smaller preliminary eruptions, that gave them enough time to gather their most valuable possessions and flee. They left behind a city frozen not in a moment of death, but simply paused. What they left behind for us to discover is nothing short of breathtaking. The volcanic ash that buried Akrotiri did so with a gentle, preserving touch, sealing multi-story buildings up to their rooftops. Walking through the excavated streets today, you don't just see foundations, you see a complete urban landscape. You can gaze up at second and third floor windows, peer into rooms, and marvel at the world's first known example of an upstairs toilet, connected to a remarkably advanced and extensive underground sewer system that would not be rivaled in Europe for over 1,000 years. The sophistication is staggering. Buildings were reinforced against earthquakes with wooden beams fitted into walls, a technique known as timber framing. They had large, well-organized storage magazines for goods, and their homes were filled with exquisite pottery and furniture. Yet the soul of Akrotiri, the element that truly brings its people to life across the vast gulf of time, is its art. The walls of its buildings were adorned with vibrant, masterful frescoes, and the ash preserved them in place with their colors still brilliantly intact. These are not merely decorative patterns, they are windows into a lost worldview. We see detailed scenes of a graceful, peaceful society, young boys boxing, fishermen proudly displaying their catch of enormous tuna, a young woman gathering saffron crocuses. There are elaborate religious processions and captivating nature scenes, like the famous spring fresco with its swooping swallows and blooming lilies, bursting with life and movement. One particularly mesmerizing fresco, the flotilla fresco, depicts a whole fleet of ships sailing between towns during a festival, suggesting a vibrant maritime culture and possibly even a ritual journey. This art doesn't just show us what the Minoans saw, it shows us how they saw it, with a sense of joy, rhythm, and a deep connection to the natural world that feels surprisingly modern. The sheer volume of trade goods found in the ruins, precious stones from Egypt, copper ingots from Cyprus, exotic oils and perfumes, paints a picture of a city at the center of a globalized Bronze Age economy. This was no isolated village, it was a cosmopolitan crossroads. The cataclysm that preserved it, however, was of such unimaginable scale that its shockwaves, both literal and cultural, rippled across the ancient world. The eruption of Thera is estimated to have been 4 to 5 times more powerful than the Krakatoa event of 1883. It likely generated colossal tsunamis that would have ravaged the northern coast of Crete, just 70 miles away, devastating the Minoan navy, their coastal ports, and their fertile agricultural land with a blanket of ash. This natural disaster, striking at the very heart of their economic and military power, is considered a primary factor in the sudden and mysterious decline of the great Minoan civilization, a powerful maritime empire that simply vanished from history, leaving behind only legends and the ruins of its grand palaces. This is the profound dual legacy of Akrotiri. On one hand, its preservation gives us an incredibly detailed, almost living portrait of a sophisticated pre-classical society that we would otherwise know very little about. It allows us to study their architecture, their art, their daily routines, and their connections to the wider world with a clarity that is unique for this period. On the other hand, the very event that preserved it also likely triggered the downfall of that entire civilization, making Akrotiri a beautiful, tragic, and perfectly preserved monument to a world that was lost in a single, earth-shattering event. It is a time capsule that holds not just the story of a city, but the story of an entire golden age, captured at its very peak and then sealed away by the volcano that both sustained its wealth and ultimately ensured its place in legend. From the volcanic ashes of the Mediterranean, we now journey east to the heart of ancient China, to a different kind of cataclysmic preservation, one born not from a sudden act of nature, but from a deliberate, monumental act of human will, only to be safeguarded by a fortunate accident of collapse and time. The Terracotta army, standing in silent vigilance for over 2,000 years, is not a city frozen in a moment of daily life, but an entire military formation frozen in perpetuity, a testament to one man's obsession with immortality and the incredible artistic and organizational prowess of the Qin dynasty. The story begins with China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, the formidable and ruthless unifier of the warring states into a single empire. His reign was marked by unprecedented centralization and ambition, from standardizing currency and script to beginning the construction of the Great Wall. But his greatest preoccupation was with death itself. He was consumed by a desire to conquer mortality and rule eternally in the afterlife. To this end, he commanded the creation of a subterranean empire, a mirror of his worldly domain, to be protected by an eternal army. This was not a symbolic gesture. It was meant to be a literal, functional force in the spiritual realm. The scale of the project is almost incomprehensible. Estimates suggest over 700,000 artisans and laborers worked for nearly 4 decades to create this necropolis, a vast complex centered around the emperor's still unexcavated tomb mound, with the army stationed in battle formation to guard its eastern approach. What makes this army so breathtaking is its astonishing individuality. We are not looking at rows of identical, mass-produced statues. Each of the estimated 8,000 soldiers is a unique masterpiece of ceramic art. They have different faces, different expressions, different hairstyles, and different body types. You can see the calm resolve of a seasoned general, the eager intensity of a young recruit, the weary determination of a veteran archer. This individuality extends to their ranks and roles: infantrymen, cavalrymen, archers kneeling in ready positions, and charioteers holding the reins of terracotta horses. The level of detail is staggering. Their armor is rendered with precise rivets and plates, their shoes have accurate treads, and even the soles are textured for grip. They were originally painted in vibrant, lifelike colors: pinks, purples, greens, and reds, making them appear shockingly real before the pigments faded upon exposure to air. This was not merely a sculpture project. It was an attempt to capture the very essence of a real, living army and translate it into an eternal form. And here is where the fascinating accident of preservation comes into play. The army was meticulously arranged in wooden roofed pits, like enormous underground hangars. Historians believe that not long after the emperor's burial and the complex's ceiling, the roof supports likely rotted or were compromised, causing the massive earthen ceilings to collapse in on the figures. For centuries, this was seen as a disaster, but in a beautiful twist of fate, this collapse was the best thing that could have happened. That crushing weight of earth and debris, while shattering many of the figures and burying them in chaotic piles, created a sealed, anaerobic environment that protected them from their greatest enemies, looters and the elements. It hid them from view, preventing the tomb raiders who likely plundered the main tomb mound. It shielded them from wind, rain, and the freeze-thaw cycles that would have eroded their delicate features over 2 millennia. The very disaster that seemingly destroyed the army is what ultimately preserved it, packing it away in a perfect, forgotten time capsule. This capsule remained sealed until a literal stroke of luck in March of 1974. A group of farmers digging a well outside the city of Xi'an struck something hard. It wasn't a rock, it was the fired clay shoulder of a life-sized soldier. Their discovery triggered one of the most significant archaeological excavations of the 20th century, slowly revealing the staggering scale of the pit complex. The world watched in awe as archaeologists, like conservators of a shattered mosaic, began the painstaking process of reassembling the broken figures piece by piece. The value of this accidental time capsule is immense. It provides an unparalleled, 3-dimensional record of Qin dynasty military technology, organization, and equipment. We can study the exact design of their powerful composite bows, the intricate weaving of their armor, and the breeding of their powerful horses. Beyond the military insights, it reveals the incredible artistic and industrial capability of early imperial China. The logistics alone, mining the clay, building kilns, firing thousands of large figures without warping them, coordinating the labor, boggle the mind. It provides concrete evidence of the emperor's absolute power and the cosmological beliefs that saw the afterlife as a direct continuation of earthly rule. The Terracotta army stands as a powerful fusion of human intention and accidental preservation, a deliberate monument that was only saved for us to discover by a fortunate cataclysm of collapse, waiting silently in the dark for centuries for a farmer's shovel to bring it back into the light. While the silent guardians of Qin Shi Huang were being slowly reassembled on land, an entirely different kind of time capsule was waiting to be discovered not under earth but underwater. For over a millennium, the legendary city of Thonis-Heracleion lay hidden beneath the Mediterranean, its existence fading into myth, remembered only through scattered mentions in ancient texts. Historians knew of a prosperous port called Thonis to the Egyptians and Heracleion to the Greeks, a crucial gateway where all trade from the Greek world entered Egypt. But its physical location was a complete mystery, lost to time and the sea until the year 2000, when French underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudiot and his team, after years of meticulous survey work, finally found it. Their discovery would reveal not a ruin, but a city asleep on the seabed, a dreamlike landscape of forgotten grandeur preserved in the silent, dark depths. The cause of its disappearance was a geological phenomenon as fascinating as it was destructive: soil liquefaction. Imagine the ground beneath your feet, seemingly solid and stable, but saturated with water. Then a massive trigger, most likely a powerful earthquake, sends shockwaves through that saturated soil. The vibrations cause the individual grains of sand to lose contact with each other, turning the solid earth instantly into a liquid slurry. The heavy stone temples, colossal statues, and buildings no longer supported, simply sank, swallowed whole by the very ground they were built upon. The city didn't just flood, it vanished, sliding beneath the waves in a catastrophic event that likely occurred in the 2nd or 1st century BC. This sudden, complete submersion is precisely what protected it. The same water that claimed it became its perfect preservative, encasing it in a cold, dark, low-oxygen environment where the processes of decay are dramatically slowed. What Gaudiot's team found on the seafloor, shrouded in silt and gently swaying seaweed, was nothing short of an underwater museum. The first signs were colossal, literally. They began to uncover enormous statues of pharaohs and queens, some towering over 16 feet tall, carved from red granite with exquisite detail, their stern visages gazing out into the murky water for centuries. Nearby lay the remains of giant stone sphinxes, guardians of a now drowned kingdom. But even more remarkable than these stone giants were the things that should have vanished completely: organic materials. The waterlogged sediment created anaerobic conditions that prevented wood from rotting. They found the stunningly well-preserved remains of 64 entire ships, their hulls and planking still intact, the largest collection of ancient ships ever found in one place. They discovered delicate gold jewelry, intricate wooden ritual artifacts, and even fragile papyrus documents, their texts still legible objects that would have turned to dust in any terrestrial archaeological site. This was a level of preservation that offered a complete, not partial, picture of ancient life. The artifacts pulled from the sediment tell the story of a city that was far more than just a port. It was a vibrant, cosmopolitan, religious and commercial melting pot. At its heart stood a great temple dedicated to the god Amun-Jereb, a site of immense spiritual significance where pharaohs are believed to have journeyed to receive their divine right to rule. The sheer volume of treasures found here, from ceremonial barges to countless coins and bronze statuettes, points to Thonis-Heracleion being a major pilgrimage center. But the cultural story is even richer. The discoveries show a fascinating blend of Egyptian and Hellenistic cultures living side by side. They found Greek weapons alongside Egyptian statues, and most tellingly, a famous black granite slab known as the Decree of Size. This stele, inscribed in both ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs and Greek, helped archaeologists finally confirm that the names Thonis and Heracleion referred to the very same city, solving a historical mystery that had persisted for centuries. This city was the essential linchpin in the ancient Mediterranean economy. Every single merchant ship traveling from Greece to the Nile Delta had to stop here first. It was the mandatory customs checkpoint where taxes were levied, goods were inspected, and a percentage of cargo was taken for the pharaoh's treasury before being allowed to sail upriver to the city of Akrotiri. The harbor basins were found to be filled with a staggering number of lead and stone weights, evidence of the frantic commercial activity that defined the city. It was a place where Egyptian priests, Greek merchants, Phoenician sailors, and Nubian traders all intersected, a bustling, international hub that thrived on the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures. Its discovery has fundamentally reshaped our understanding of Egypt's late period, illustrating not an isolated civilization in decline, but a dynamic, connected power actively engaging with the wider Mediterranean world right up until its sudden, sinking end. From the sunken grandeur of Thonis-Heracleion, we now travel to a very different kind of preserving environment, one not of deep water, but of dense, damp earth in the peat bogs of northern Europe. Here, the time capsules we find are not grand cities or armies, but profoundly intimate and often haunting snapshots of individual lives. The bog bodies of this region offer a different kind of window into the past, one that is startlingly personal and preserved with a clarity that can feel almost unsettling. These are not skeletons, they are people, their faces, their hands, and even the expressions they wore in their final moments captured for eternity by the unique and almost magical chemistry of the peat bog. The preservation process in a bog is a fascinating and delicate balance of natural forces. It begins when a body is placed or perhaps thrown into a waterlogged bog. The water itself is cold and, most importantly, stagnant, meaning it contains very little oxygen. This lack of oxygen prevents aerobic bacteria, the primary agents of decomposition, from functioning. But the real magic happens because of the bog's unique vegetation. Sphagnum moss, which makes up most of the peat, releases sphagnum, a complex carbohydrate, and humic acid into the water as it decays. This creates an environment that is highly acidic, almost like a natural tanning vat. The acids tan the skin, turning it a dark, leathery brown and preserving it perfectly, while they also leach calcium from the bones, making them soft and pliable over centuries. This is why bog bodies often have incredibly well-preserved skin, hair, and internal organs, but their bones can be as flexible as rubber. It's a trade-off that gives us an incredibly detailed portrait of the person, from their last meal to the style of their hair, while leaving their skeleton almost ghost-like. Perhaps the most famous of these individuals is the Tollund man, discovered in 1950 in a bog in Denmark. When his discoverers first saw him, they thought they had found a recent murder victim, so perfect was his preservation. He lies in a peaceful, sleeping posture, his face so serene and detailed that you can see the stubble on his chin, the lines on his forehead, and the faint wrinkles around his eyes. A leather noose was still drawn tight around his neck, the clear cause of his death. Yet there is no look of agony on his face, only calm acceptance, a detail that has fueled endless speculation about his final moments. He was dressed simply, wearing a pointed skin cap and a leather belt, but otherwise naked. Scientific analysis of his stomach contents revealed his last meal was a simple porridge made of barley, flax, and other seeds, eaten 12 to 24 hours before he died. This mundane detail is what makes him so profoundly human. We know not only how he died, but what he had for supper the night before. Another compelling figure is Lindoman, found in a peat bog in Cheshire, England, in 1984. His story appears far more violent. He was a young, well-built man in his mid-20s, and he suffered a horrific, ritualized death. The evidence suggests he was struck on the head, garroted with a sinew cord that broke his neck, and then his throat was cut. He was then placed face down in the shallow waters of the bog. The violence of his end, combined with the fact that his body was found with no possessions, points strongly to his being a victim of a ritual sacrifice. His well-groomed hands with finely manicured nails and his healthy physique suggest he was not a common laborer but perhaps someone of high status, chosen as an offering to the gods. His remains even contained mistletoe pollen, a plant sacred to the Druids, adding another layer of spiritual significance to his death. These individuals are more than just cold cases from the Iron Age. They are keys to understanding the beliefs and social structures of prehistoric European cultures. The nature of their deaths, often involving elements of restraint, violence, and careful placement in the bog, strongly supports the theory that many were ritual sacrifices. Ancient Celtic texts and Roman accounts describe the importance of bogs and wetlands as liminal spaces, thresholds between our world and the world of the gods. What better place to offer a gift to the deities than this in-between land of water and earth? The bodies may have been offered to ensure a good harvest, victory in battle, or to appease gods during a time of crisis. The preservation of their skin and features allows us to see them not as abstract concepts, but as real people who are part of these profound and, to our modern sensibilities, brutal rituals. Beyond the dramatic stories of their deaths, the bog bodies provide an astonishingly complete catalogue of everyday life from 2,000 years ago. The tannic acids of the bog preserve clothing with incredible fidelity. We have found woolen cloaks, leather caps, and even sophisticated hairstyles, like the elaborate side not worn by the Haraldskær woman, another Danish bog body. We can analyze their gut contents to understand Iron Age agriculture and diet, which was far more varied and sophisticated than once assumed, including grains, weeds, and even traces of mistletoe. We can study their health from their preserved skin and hair, finding evidence of parasites and nutritional deficiencies. Each body is a time capsule that holds not just a story of death, but a wealth of information about how people lived, what they wore, what they ate, and what they believed. They remind us that the most powerful connections to the past are sometimes not found in grand palaces or sunken cities, but in the quiet, waterlogged earth, holding the silent, preserved form of a single human being. High in the thin, piercing air of the Andes, where the sky is a deep, unforgiving blue and the wind whips across volcanic peaks, the Inca sought to commune with their gods in the most profound way imaginable. They didn't build just temples of stone, they created sacred landscapes, offering what they held most precious, the lives of their most perfect and beautiful children, to the mountain deities or apus who controlled weather, water, and the very survival of their empire. What they could never have anticipated was that the very environment they believed was inhabited by these powerful gods would also act as a perfect, natural deep freezer, preserving these sacrifices so completely that they would become some of the most poignant and informative time capsules ever discovered. The most famous of these individuals is known to the world as Juanita, the Lady of Ampoto. Her story began in the 1400s, a young girl living in the Inca Empire, likely chosen for her health, beauty, and noble lineage. Her life would end in a solemn, high-altitude ritual on the summit of Mount Ampoto, a volcano soaring over 20,000 feet above sea level. She was not killed in a violent, angry act, but rather, according to archaeological evidence, in a carefully orchestrated ceremony. After being given a meal and perhaps a sedating drink, she was struck a single, precise blow to the head with a ceremonial club. Her death was swift. She was then seated in a small tomb, her knees drawn to her chest, surrounded by exquisite offerings, delicate gold and silver figurines, finely woven textiles, pottery containing food, and a headdress of feathers. Then the mountain took her. She was left to the elements, a perfect gift to the gods, and the mountain accepted its offering in the most extraordinary way. The combination of extreme cold, intense ultraviolet radiation, and the dry, thin air at that altitude created a perfect natural mummification process. Unlike the elaborate, human-driven embalming of Egyptian mummies, Juanita's preservation was entirely accidental, a direct result of the harsh climate. The cold froze her tissues solid, effectively pushing pause on decomposition. The dry air then desiccated her body, drawing out all moisture and preventing bacterial growth. The result is nothing short of miraculous. When she was discovered in 1995 by anthropologist Johann Reinhard, her skin was still soft, her hair perfectly braided, her facial features entirely recognizable. She was not a skeleton, she was a sleeping girl frozen in time for 500 years. The scientific insights gleaned from her and other so-called ice mummies like her are unparalleled. Because of this natural freeze-drying process, even her internal organs were preserved. Scientists were able to perform a virtual autopsy using CT scans, examining her stomach contents to learn about the Inca diet and even identify her last meal. They could study her lungs for signs of high-altitude adaptation and analyze her DNA to trace her ancestry and genetic lineage. Her exquisite clothing, woven from fine llama and alpaca wool, provides a masterclass in Inca textile artistry with patterns and colors that have not faded. The artifacts buried with her are not corroded or broken but exist in a state of pristine preservation, telling us exactly what the Inca considered valuable enough to give to their gods. But perhaps the most profound understanding we gain is cultural and spiritual. These children were not victims of a cruel or careless society. Everything about their burial suggests immense reverence and care. They were chosen for this honor, believed to become deified intermediaries between the world of the Inca and the powerful forces of nature. Their sacrifice was the ultimate act of reciprocity, a concept known as Aini, which was central to the Inca worldview. It was an exchange. The Inca offered the most valuable thing they possessed, a flawless human life, to ensure the Apus would provide water for their crops, protection from disasters, and continuity for their empire. The preservation of these children allows us to see this complex belief system not as a historical footnote, but as a tangible, deeply human practice. We are granted a window into a culture that viewed the world as a sacred balance, where communication with the divine required the ultimate sincerity. These frozen time capsules, resting silently on the roofs of the world, are a hauntingly beautiful and deeply respectful testament to faith, sacrifice, and the incredible, unintended power of nature to safeguard a story. While the frozen tombs of the Andes and the ash-buried cities of the Mediterranean were preserved by dramatic, sudden events, one of the world's most important ancient sites owes its survival to a far slower, more enigmatic process. The story of Mohenjo-Daro is not one of fire and brimstone, but of quiet abandonment and the patient, gentle blanket of river silt. Located in what is now Pakistan, this was one of the greatest cities of the Indus Valley civilization, a culture that flourished alongside ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia yet remains far more mysterious. Around 1900 BC, for reasons we still do not fully understand, its inhabitants began to leave. They didn't flee a volcanic eruption, they simply departed. And over the centuries that followed, the mud and silt from seasonal floods of the mighty Indus River gradually buried the empty streets and buildings, sealing them away in a protective cocoon of earth that would hide them for nearly 4,000 years. What this gradual burial preserved is nothing short of revolutionary to our understanding of early urban life. When archaeologists began excavating in the 1920s, they didn't find pyramids or ziggurats, the typical markers of ancient power. Instead, they uncovered a city of stunning, almost modern rationality. Mohenjo-Daro was a masterpiece of urban planning, built with a level of foresight and civic organization that would not be seen again for millennia. The entire city was laid out on a precise grid pattern of wide, straight streets, dividing it into neat blocks, but the true genius lay beneath the surface. They developed the world's first known comprehensive urban sanitation system. Almost every single house had its own bathing area and a dedicated latrine, and these were all connected to a city-wide network of covered drains and sewers that ran under the main streets, channeling wastewater out of the residential areas. This concern for public health and hygiene at such an unimaginably early date suggests a society that prioritized collective well-being in a way that feels remarkably advanced. This obsession with standardization is another hallmark that points to a highly organized and centralized authority, though not necessarily a king or emperor in the traditional sense. The bricks used to build the entire city are a perfect example. They weren't made in random sizes. They were meticulously standardized in a ratio of 4:2:1, meaning every single brick, whether used for a grand public building or a modest home, was proportionally identical. This didn't just create a uniform look, it made construction incredibly efficient and repairs simple, as a brick from one part of the city could fit perfectly into a structure in another. This same standardization is seen in the system of weights and measures they used. Exquisitely carved cubical stone weights have been found across the Indus Valley, and they follow a precise and uniform scale, essential for the smooth operation of trade and commerce across a vast civilization. It speaks to a society governed by rules, order, and a shared sense of how things should be done. And yet, for all this evidence of complex organization, Mohenjo-Daro holds onto its greatest secret tightly: the identity of its rulers. This is the central puzzle of the city. We have found no grand royal palaces overflowing with treasure, no colossal statues of triumphant kings, no elaborate tombs filled with grave goods to accompany a ruler into the afterlife. There is one large structure that archaeologists call the Great Bath, a beautiful, watertight public pool that was likely used for ritual purification, but it feels more like a shared civic or religious space than a throne room. Instead of evidence of a single powerful ruler, we find hints of a different kind of power structure. The city's wealth seems to have been more evenly distributed than in other contemporary civilizations. The houses, while of different sizes, are all well built and have access to the same advanced amenities like water and drainage. This has led many scholars to speculate that Mohenjo-Daro may have been governed by a council of elders, a group of merchants, or even priests, a form of early oligarchy or collective leadership rather than a monarchy. The absence of obvious royal iconography forces us to reconsider what power and authority could look like in the ancient world. The artifacts left behind in this accidentally preserved time capsule are equally fascinating. Among the most evocative finds are the small, square soapstone seals, intricately carved with images of animals like unicorns, bulls, and elephants, and bearing a mysterious script that has never been deciphered. These seals were likely used by merchants to stamp their goods. They are works of art, but they are also functional objects, pointing to a sophisticated trading society. We find beautiful pottery, children's toys like small carts and whistles, exquisite bead jewelry made from materials sourced from far away, and even a famous bronze statuette of a dancing girl, her confident pose capturing a moment of grace from 4,000 years ago. These objects don't tell stories of war and conquest. They whisper of craftsmanship, daily life, and economic prosperity. The ultimate reason for the city's abandonment remains one of history's great unsolved mysteries. The gradual silting that preserved it may also have been its undoing. Some theories suggest that repeated, catastrophic flooding from the Indus River eventually made agriculture impossible and damaged the city's infrastructure beyond repair. Others point to a shift in river courses that would have cut Mohenjo-Daro off from its vital trade routes. There is also evidence of a slow decline in standards. Later layers of excavation show that the meticulous maintenance of the drains and streets began to falter. It's possible that a combination of environmental change and social or economic collapse led people to simply drift away to other settlements, leaving the great city to be slowly reclaimed by the silt of the very river that gave it life. Mohenjo-Daro stands as a powerful counterpoint to the cities of sudden cataclysm. It reminds us that time capsules are not always created in a single, violent instant. Sometimes they are formed through slow, patient processes of neglect, where the gentle hand of nature, rather than its furious fist, steps in to protect the past for the future. While the sudden, violent ends of Pompeii and Herculaneum capture our imagination with their dramatic finality, the story of Ostia offers a different, more gradual kind of preservation, one not of a single catastrophic moment, but of a long, slow sigh. As the bustling port city that fed and supplied ancient Rome, Ostia was the empire's vital gateway to the Mediterranean. But when Rome's power eventually waned, so too did the fortunes of its port. Rather than being destroyed in a flash, Ostia was simply forgotten. And in that forgetting, something remarkable happened. The Tiber River, which had been its lifeblood for centuries, began to gently reclaim the land. Year after year, century after century, layers of silt and sediment from the river's floods quietly blanketed the abandoned city. This wasn't a cataclysm. It was a slow, patient burial that protected Ostia from the one thing that destroys most ancient ruins, us. Later generations didn't build on top of Ostia because they didn't know it was there. Stone robbers had no reason to dismantle its structures for building materials because they were hidden under meters of earth. This gentle entombment by the river meant that when archaeologists began their meticulous excavations, they didn't find a jumble of foundations. They uncovered an entire city frozen not in a moment of death, but in a state of suspended animation. They found multi-story apartment buildings called insulae still standing with their staircases intact. They revealed grand theaters where you can still sit on the stone seats and imagine the performances, and vast warehouses called horia that once held the grain to feed 1 million people in Rome. Most stunningly, they uncovered breathtaking mosaics that paved the floors of shops and baths, their vibrant tiles and clever designs perfectly preserved under the protective soil, announcing the wares sold within, from shipping vessels to wild beasts for the games. This incredible level of preservation provides us with something rare, a complete picture of a working-class Roman city. While Pompeii shows us Roman life in a resort town, and Heracleion shows us a religious port, Ostia is the ultimate snapshot of Roman commerce and industry. Walking its streets is like walking through the logistical backbone of an empire. The inscriptions found everywhere painted on walls, carved into stone, are not grand declarations of emperors, but the everyday advertisements of merchants, the dedications of trade guilds, and the tombstones of ordinary citizens. They reveal a strikingly diverse population. You can read the name of a shipowner from North Africa, a merchant from Greece, and a freed slave who became a successful businessman. Ostia was a melting pot, a city built on trade and the movement of goods, and its preserved ruins let us see the faces of the people who made that machine work. Perhaps the most profound insight we gain from Ostia is the sheer scale and organization required to keep Rome alive. The city was essentially a giant distribution center. Ships from across the Mediterranean would dock and unload their cargoes of Egyptian grain, Spanish olive oil, North African wine, and luxury goods from the East. This bounty was then stored in those massive warehouses before being loaded onto smaller riverboats to be hauled up the Tiber to Rome. The entire economy of the ancient world's largest city flowed through these streets. We can see the offices of shipping corporations, the temples dedicated to foreign gods brought by sailors from distant lands, and the baths and taverns where dockworkers, sailors, and merchants would have gathered. Ostia doesn't just show us buildings, it shows us the rhythm of daily life for the countless unnamed individuals who fueled an empire, their stories written not in history books, but in the brick and mortar of the city they built. Its silent, silt-filled streets speak volumes about the practical, gritty, and magnificent engine of commerce that was the Roman Empire. Far from the bustling ports and crowded Roman streets, another kind of time capsule was being forged in the silent, searing heat of the Taklamakan Desert in northwestern China. This is one of the most arid and inhospitable places on Earth, a vast sea of sand dunes whose name famously translates to "you go in, you don't come out." Yet, it was in this deadly environment that the dry, salty sand performed a miraculous act of preservation, creating one of the most puzzling and profound archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the Tarim mummies. These are not the carefully prepared mummies of Egyptian pharaohs, but ordinary people from a lost Bronze Age culture, whose bodies were so perfectly and accidentally preserved by the desert that they look as if they passed away only decades ago, not 4,000 years in the past. The discovery of these individuals is as dramatic as their appearance. They began to surface in the early 20th century as local explorers and later archaeologists started to uncover ancient cemeteries along the long-vanished rivers that once snaked through the desert. The most famous of these sites is the Zayao Cemetery, an eerie and spectacular dune-top necropolis that looks like a forest of wooden stakes protruding from the sand. Each stake marked a burial, and beneath them, sealed in upside-down wooden boats that were covered in cattle hides, the dead lay waiting. When researchers opened these boat coffins, they were met with a sight that defied all expectation. They found men and women with high cheekbones, long noses, and light-colored hair, their features strikingly European. They were dressed in beautifully woven woolen garments, felted caps, and leather boots, their faces often covered with a red or white substance. The most astonishing detail of all was their skin, tanned but supple, their eyelashes and hair still perfectly intact, and even the intricate patterns on their textiles still vibrantly colored. The desert's complete lack of moisture had simply pulled all the water from their bodies and halted bacterial growth, freeze-drying them into a state of eternal rest. This incredible preservation offers an unparalleled window into Bronze Age material culture, particularly the art of textiles. We don't have to guess what these people wore, we can see it in breathtaking detail. The mummies are clothed in elegantly tailored trousers, sophisticated twill and tartan-patterned fabrics, and plaid woolen skirts that would not look out of place in the Scottish Highlands. One famous mummy, known as the Beauty of Lulan, was found wearing a simple goatskin cap and fine leather shoes. Another, the Charchan Man, was buried with a deep red tunic and matching leggings. The quality and style of this clothing immediately raised a profound and controversial question. How did people who looked like they were from Western Eurasia, wearing textiles with clear technological and stylistic links to ancient Celtic and Germanic cultures, end up buried in the heart of Asia thousands of years before the official opening of the Silk Road? The existence of the Tarim mummies has fundamentally challenged the historical narrative of ancient China and Central Asia. For a long time, it was assumed that the Tarim Basin was a remote and isolated backwater until the Han Dynasty began to open trade routes around the 2nd century BC. These mummies prove that the region was not isolated at all. Instead, it was a vibrant melting pot and a crossroads for ancient migrations millennia earlier. Genetic studies on the mummies have confirmed their diverse origins, linking them to ancient populations from Siberia, the Caucasus, and the Iranian Plateau. They were not a single homogeneous group, but a complex mix of people who had traveled vast distances and settled in this oasis region, bringing their technologies, their styles of dress, and their genes with them. They were, in effect, the pioneers of the Silk Road, living proof that the exchange of goods, ideas, and people between East and West did not begin with formal trade agreements, but with the slow, courageous migration of prehistoric peoples. The artifacts buried with them further paint a picture of a unique and sophisticated culture that blended influences from all directions. They buried their dead in boat coffins, a practice that may hint at a spiritual belief in a final journey across waters, a poignant tradition for a people living in a desert. They placed carved wooden fertility symbols with the women and small bundles of ephedra, a stimulant plant, beside the bodies, perhaps for use in the afterlife. They valued their livestock, evidenced by the countless sheep and cattle remains found at the sites, and their mastery of the horse is suggested by bits and other tack. The Xiao cemetery itself, with its massive scale and organized layout, indicates a stable, structured society with shared rituals and beliefs, not just a scattered band of nomads. Ultimately, the Tarim mummies are more than just well-preserved bodies. They are a powerful corrective to our understanding of the ancient world. They force us to abandon simplistic ideas of East and West as separate, isolated spheres. These individuals represent a deep history of globalization, a testament to the incredible human drive to explore, trade, and connect across seemingly impossible distances. They are accidental time capsules that preserved not only their own physical forms but also evidence of a vast, interconnected Bronze Age world, waiting silently in the desert sands for thousands of years to tell their story and rewrite our own. While the perfectly preserved bodies of the Tarim Basin offer a window into a world thousands of years in the past, a very different kind of time capsule is re-emerging right now in the American Southwest, proving that the forces of preservation are not just ancient history but an ongoing process. The story unfolds at Lake Mead, the vast reservoir created by the Hoover Dam on the Colorado River, a symbol of 20th century American ambition and engineering prowess. For decades, this massive body of water hid a secret beneath its surface, the remains of several small towns that were deliberately flooded to make way for progress. Now, as a prolonged and severe drought grips the region, causing the lake's water levels to plummet to historic lows, these ghostly settlements are slowly returning to the light, offering a haunting and tangible connection to a much more recent past. The most prominent of these resurfacing towns is St. Thomas, Nevada. Founded in 1865 by Mormon pioneers, it was a thriving little community for decades, a classic Western outpost with a post office, a school, shops, and homes sustained by farming in the fertile Muddy River Valley. Its fate was sealed when the ambitious project to build the Hoover Dam was approved in the 1920s. The creation of Lake Mead meant the entire valley would be intentionally inundated. The residents were forced to abandon their homes, and by 1938, the rising waters of the new reservoir had completely swallowed the town. For over half a century, St. Thomas lay silent and forgotten under nearly 60 feet of water, its memory fading into local legend. This underwater slumber, it turns out, acted as an incredible preservative. The same water that submerged the town also protected it. Sealed in a cold, dark, and low-oxygen environment, the structures were shielded from the very things that typically destroy abandoned settlements: the scorching sun that cracks and fades wood, the punishing wind and rain that cause erosion, and unfortunately, the vandalism and looting that often target forgotten places. The lake bed became a time capsule, locking the town in a state of suspended animation from the moment the last resident left. Now, as the water recedes, it is not revealing a jumble of rotten wood and rubble. Instead, it is unveiling the stark, skeletal outlines of a 20th century town. The foundations of buildings emerge from the cracked mud like ghostly blueprints. Walls made of concrete and stone still stand, defiant against the elements. Perhaps most startling of all are the trees that once lined the streets, their bare, silvery trunks and roots, long since stripped of bark and leaves by the water, rising from the dry lakebed like sculptures, marking where life once flourished. The artifacts emerging from the mud are powerfully ordinary, and that is what makes them so compelling. These aren't relics from a distant, unknowable civilization. They are items from our own grandparents' or great-grandparents' era. As the silt dries and cracks, it gives up its secrets. A child's porcelain doll, its painted eyes still staring blankly skyward. Thick, heavy glass bottles that once held medicine or soda. Rusted-out remains of a Ford Model T, and simple ceramic plates from a family's last meal. Each object is a frozen moment from the Great Depression, a time of immense hardship when the government's promise of water and power for the future came at the cost of these people's present. These items don't require an archaeologist's interpretation to feel familiar, which creates an immediate and emotional bridge to the people who are forced to walk away from them. The reappearance of St. Thomas and other sites like it presents a complex and sobering narrative. On one hand, it is a fascinating archaeological opportunity, a chance to study a perfectly preserved slice of 1930s American life without the need for excavation. It is a historian's dream, a direct physical link to a pivotal moment in the nation's development. On the other hand, its re-emergence is driven by a modern-day catastrophe, a devastating mega-drought in the western United States, widely exacerbated by climate change that threatens the water security of millions of people. The same dropping water levels that reveal this fascinating time capsule also signal a looming crisis for the region, creating a stark juxtaposition between historical curiosity and contemporary anxiety. This phenomenon transforms Lake Mead from a simple reservoir into a vast, unintended museum. Its exhibits rising and falling with the waterline. It serves as a powerful reminder that the creation of time capsules is not confined to distant volcanic eruptions or ancient geological shifts. It is a process that continues all around us, often born from the intersection of human ambition and environmental change. The story of St. Thomas is a 20th century story, but its preservation and revelation are a 21st century event, proving that the dialogue between humanity and the natural world is constant, and that the past is never truly buried. It is simply waiting for the right conditions to share its story once more. But the story of Ashfall is about so much more than just a moment of death. It is a story about life, about a specific place and time perfectly preserved. This was the Miocene epoch, a period often called the Golden Age of mammals. The world was warmer and wetter than today, and the Great Plains of North America were not yet the vast grasslands we know. Instead, they were a mosaic of forests and savannas, teeming with a breathtaking array of creatures that seem almost fantastical to us now. Ashfall freezes this lost world in astonishing detail. We don't just find a few scattered bones, we find complete, articulated skeletons, animals lying exactly as they fell, their bodies interlocked in a final, peaceful repose. This level of completeness is the paleontologist's holy grail, allowing us to see not just what these animals looked like, but how they were built and how they might have moved. The cast of characters unearthed at Ashfall reads like a list from a prehistoric epic. There were barrel-bodied rhinos, their skeletons so common they define the main fossil bed. Herds of three-toed horses, no larger than modern-day sheep, were overcome while drinking. We find the remains of camel-like animals called stenomylus, tiny deer-like creatures, and intimidating saber-toothed deer, their bizarre fangs preserved intact. There were massive tortoises, birds that nested on the ground, and even evidence of predators like bone-crushing dogs, though they are rare, likely having avoided the toxic area after the initial disaster. This incredible diversity gives us a complete cross-section of an ecosystem, from the largest plant eaters to the smallest scavengers, all captured together in a single, tragic tableau. The real magic of Ashfall, however, lies in the microscopic and internal details that ordinary fossil sites almost never preserve, because the volcanic ash was so fine and suffocated the animals so quickly, their remains were left completely undisturbed. Scavengers could not pick the bones clean, and the elements could not scatter them. This allowed for the most extraordinary finds. Paleontologists have been able to analyze the stomach contents of some animals, identifying the specific types of grasses and plants they had eaten for their last meal. They have found fossilized traces of the soft tissue of a turtle's heart, a discovery of almost unimaginable rarity. They can study the bones of pregnant females and find the tiny, delicate skeletons of their unborn calves still nestled within the ribcage, a heartbreakingly intimate detail that connects us directly to the cycle of life 12 million years ago. The event that created this time capsule was not a local Nebraska occurrence. The source of the cataclysm was a series of truly massive volcanic eruptions hundreds of miles to the west, in what is now Idaho. The ash from these eruptions, known as the Bruno-Jarbidge supervolcano, was carried on the prevailing winds across the continent. It fell like a fine, deadly snow over thousands of square miles. For most areas, this was a minor, temporary nuisance. But at this particular watering hole in Nebraska, the geography was just right, or just wrong for the ash to accumulate in a shallow depression, concentrating its deadly effect. The animals that relied on this water source continued to return to it, unaware that each drink was coating their lungs and digestive tracts with microscopic glass shards, leading to a slow, agonizing death by suffocation and internal injury. Their tragedy, drawn out over weeks or even months, is what created the densely packed bone bed we see today. What makes Ashfall so profoundly important is that it allows us to move beyond simply cataloging species. It lets us ask and answer questions about prehistoric behavior and social structure. The way the skeletons are grouped tells a vivid story. The rhinos, for example, are often found in groups, with the largest adults on the outside and the smaller juveniles protected in the center. This suggests they had a herding instinct and a social structure geared toward protecting their young, much like modern rhinos or elephants. We can see how different species interacted at a shared resource, painting a dynamic picture of a living, breathing community rather than a static collection of fossils. This single site does more to illuminate the ecology of the Miocene than 1,000 scattered bone fragments ever could, proving that the most devastating cataclysms can sometimes grant us the most detailed and compassionate view of a lost world. Long before empires rose and fell, before the pyramids pierced the Egyptian sky or Stonehenge's stones were set in place, a remarkable experiment in human living was unfolding on the fertile Konya plain of central Turkey. Here, around 9,000 years ago, a community of early farmers did something unprecedented. They stopped moving. They chose to stay, to build, and to create one of the world's first known major settlements, a sprawling proto-city we now call Çatalhöyük. But its story doesn't end with its eventual abandonment around 5700 BC. In a beautiful twist of fate, the very environmental forces that sustained it, the seasonal flooding of the nearby Çarşamba River, would also become its eternal guardian. Layer upon layer of silt and mud slowly, gently buried the city, not in a violent cataclysm, but in a patient, protective embrace that would preserve its secrets for over 7 millennia, gifting us an unparalleled window into the very dawn of civilization. What makes Çatalhöyük so utterly fascinating and so radically different from any city we would recognize today is its architecture. Imagine a vast human-made hill, a honeycomb of dwellings built so closely together that there were no streets, no alleyways, no public squares. The city was a single, massive, interconnected structure. The outer walls of one house served as the fortification for the entire community. To move about, you didn't walk through streets, you climbed across the rooftops, which functioned as the settlement's true thoroughfares. Each rectangular home was entered through a single opening in the roof, reached by a wooden ladder. This unique design speaks volumes about the society that built it. It suggests a community with a powerful emphasis on collective security and social cohesion, a place where the distinction between private home and public fortress was completely blurred. Life literally unfolded on top of each other, creating a level of intimacy and interdependence that is almost unimaginable to us today. Stepping down through that roof entrance, you would have entered a single, multi-purpose room, the heart of family life. The floors and walls were kept meticulously clean, plastered and repolished with a smooth, white clay countless times over generations, creating a bright, almost clinical interior. A central hearth provided warmth and light for cooking, and raised platforms along the walls served as sleeping and sitting areas. But it is what was on those walls that truly takes your breath away and provides the soul of Çatalhöyük. The inhabitants were prolific artists, adorning their homes with vibrant and complex murals. These are not simple decorations, they are a sophisticated visual language. They depict hunting scenes with wild bulls and deer, vultures swooping down on headless human figures, and elaborate geometric patterns of hands and chevrons. Some scholars interpret these scenes as narratives of life, death, and a complex belief system where humans and powerful animals were deeply interconnected. Perhaps even more striking than the paintings are the sculptures. Molded from the same clay that plastered the walls, the people of Çatalhöyük created stunning three-dimensional art. The most famous are the clay figurines, particularly the so-called seated woman of Çatalhöyük. This figurine, found pressed into a grain bin, depicts a voluptuous woman sitting proudly on a throne flanked by two feline creatures. She is not a delicate Venus, she is a powerful, imposing figure embodying themes of fertility, authority, and possibly a connection to the natural world. Beyond these figurines, they incorporated animal parts into their architecture in a deeply ritualistic way. The walls of many homes feature installed bucrania, the plastered skulls and horns of wild bulls, creating a powerful, almost sacred atmosphere. These were not trophies in a modern sense. They were likely integral to the spiritual life of the household, connecting the living to the potent spirit of the wild. The mud that eventually sealed the city did more than just protect brick and bone. it performed the near-miraculous feat of preserving the ephemeral. In most Neolithic sites, we find only stone tools and broken pottery, the durable leftovers of ancient life. But at Çatalhöyük, the anaerobic, waterlogged conditions created by the mud prevented the decay of organic materials that normally vanish in the blink of an archaeological eye. This is where the time capsule truly shines. Excavators have recovered delicate woven baskets, their patterns still clearly visible. They have found wooden vessels, textiles, and even remains of the food they ate: lentils, peas, and barley stored in clay pots. This incredible preservation allows us to move beyond speculation and understand their daily existence on a tangible level. We know what they crafted, what they wore, and what was in their pantry. We can analyze their tools and see the wear patterns from cutting reeds or harvesting grain, turning abstract concepts of early farming into a visible, relatable reality. All of this evidence combines to paint a picture of a society that challenges our traditional narratives about the Neolithic revolution. For a long time, we imagined this transition from nomadic hunting and gathering to settled farming as a straightforward march of progress. Çatalhöyük complicates that story beautifully. Here was a society that had fully embraced agriculture. They cultivated wheat and barley and domesticated sheep and goats, but they still relied heavily on hunting wild cattle and horses. Their economy was a hybrid, a balance between the new world of farming and the old world of the hunt. Furthermore, the evidence points to a surprisingly egalitarian social structure. There are no obvious signs of a ruling elite. The houses are all roughly the same size and complexity. There are no grand tombs for chieftains or palaces for priests. The art and rituals seem to have been decentralized, practiced within the home rather than in large, communal temples controlled by a powerful few. This suggests that early urban life may have begun not with kings and hierarchies, but with networks of families choosing to live together in a complex, shared, and likely ritualistic community, making Çatalhöyük not just a preserved city, but a preserved idea, a glimpse of a path that human civilization might have taken but ultimately didn't. While the bustling port of Ostia thrived on commerce and the summer bog bodies revealed intimate rituals of faith, the ancient Roman elite sought a very different kind of experience just a short journey from the capital. They flocked to the Bay of Naples, to a city dedicated not to work or worship, but to pure, unadulterated pleasure. This was Baiae, the most infamous and luxurious resort the ancient world had ever known, a place where scandal and splendor flowed as freely as the wine. Poets wrote of its decadence, senators schemed in its baths, and emperors built their most extravagant villas along its stunning coastline. It was a playground of mythic proportions, a sun-drenched symbol of Roman opulence that seemed as eternal as the empire itself. Yet, this glittering world of leisure would not be destroyed by barbarian invasions or political collapse, but would instead be slowly, inexorably, claimed by the very earth it was built upon, sinking beneath the waves to become one of the world's most breathtaking underwater museums. The phenomenon that led to Baiae's submersion is a fascinating and slow-moving geological process known as bradysism. Unlike a sudden earthquake or a violent volcanic eruption, bradysism is a gradual rising and falling of the Earth's surface caused by the filling and emptying of vast underground magma chambers. The Phlegrean Fields, the supervolcanic region upon which Baiae was built, is essentially a giant, restless caldera. As magma shifts deep below, the ground above it inflates and deflates like a vast geological breath. In some periods, this causes the land to rise. In others, it causes a slow, relentless subsidence. Over centuries, this incremental sinking, combined with the local sea level rise since the Roman era, allowed the Mediterranean to gradually encroach upon the city's lavish waterfront. Buildings that once looked out over the bay found their foundations submerged, their marble floors becoming the ocean floor, their grand courtyards now home to schools of fish. This was not a sudden cataclysm that sent citizens fleeing, but a creeping inevitability, a slow-motion reclamation project by nature that unfolded over hundreds of years. This gradual sinking, while a disaster for its ancient inhabitants, proved to be a phenomenal act of preservation for archaeology. The marine environment that enveloped Bai's ruins became a perfect protector. The silty seabed gently covered magnificent mosaic floors, shielding their intricate tesserae from being worn away by waves and currents. The salt water and the layer of sediment created a low-oxygen environment that prevented wood and other organic materials from rotting. Most importantly, the water acted as a barrier against the greatest destroyer of ancient sites, human looting. For centuries, the most opulent treasures of Bai lay hidden under just a few meters of water, safe from the stone robbers who dismantled so many other Roman structures to build medieval castles and Renaissance palaces. The sea, in effect, placed a perfect glass case over a sprawling exhibit of Roman luxury, curating it for future generations to discover. And what an exhibit it is! Swimming through the submerged archaeological park of Bai is like gliding through a dream of ancient Rome. The ruins are not scattered fragments, they are coherent, recognizable structures. You can float over the remains of a vast domed bath complex, its curved walls and archways still defiantly standing. You can trace the outline of a luxurious villa, its rooms clearly defined by foundations and crumbling walls. Most stunning of all are the floors. Time and again, the silt parts to reveal breathtaking mosaics that have lost none of their brilliance underwater. Elaborate geometric patterns in black and white tile unfold across vast expanses, and more complex figurative scenes, once trod upon by emperors, now lie perfectly preserved for divers to admire. Marble statues that once adorned nymphea and gardens now stand on the seabed, their forms softened by marine growth but their imperial grandeur still unmistakable, silent guardians of a drowned world. These underwater remains provide a uniquely candid look into the leisure and engineering of Rome's most privileged class. Baiae was more than just a town. It was a sprawling complex of imperial villas and private retreats owned by figures like Julius Caesar, Nero, and Hadrian. It was famous for its natural thermal springs, which the Romans channeled into elaborate bathhouses, believing the hot, mineral-rich waters had healing properties. The submerged ruins reveal the incredible sophistication of this hydraulic engineering, the network of pipes, the hypocaust systems for heating floors and walls, and the complex of pools set at different temperatures. This was a place where the Roman mastery of architecture was dedicated entirely to the pursuit of pleasure and wellness, a testament to a society that had the wealth, time, and technology to turn a natural landscape into a paradise of engineered luxury. The story of Baiae is a powerful reminder that cataclysmic preservation isn't always a story of fire and sudden burial. It can also be a tale of slow, patient sinking, a gradual transformation from a center of earthly power to an ethereal underwater kingdom. It shows how the same volatile geological forces that provided the thermal springs that made the city famous ultimately conspired to take it back, creating a hauntingly beautiful time capsule in the process. Today, Baiae exists in two worlds. A modest modern town on land sits directly atop the parts of the ancient city that remain above water, while its heart lies just offshore, a silent, magnificent ruin where octopuses dart through ancient windows and history is written not in books but on the ocean floor. Far to the north and east, in the wind-scoured Altai Mountains where the modern borders of Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan converge, the fierce nomadic horsemen known as the Scythians built their tombs for eternity. They could never have known that the very ground they chose would become the most faithful guardian of their legacy. These were not the stone pyramids of Egypt or the vast tumuli of China. These were kurgans, great circular mounds of stone and earth raised over deep burial chambers. For centuries, these tombs sat silent and frozen, their secrets locked away by a relentless, deep cold that seeped into the very heart of the structures, creating a permanent, natural freezer that would hold its contents in perfect suspended animation for over 2,400 years. It was this permafrost, this eternal ice, that would perform a miracle of preservation, allowing us to meet the Scythians not as dusty skeletons, but as living, breathing people frozen in time. The discovery and excavation of these tombs, particularly the famous Pazyryk kurgans in the 20th century, revealed a level of preservation that stunned the archaeological world. When researchers carefully peeled back the layers of stone and earth, they often found the burial chambers below filled with clear, solid ice. This ice had seeped in through cracks and fissures over the millennia, slowly flooding the chambers and encasing everything within in a transparent, freezing cocoon. This was not a destructive flood, it was a protective seal. The constant sub-zero temperatures created an anaerobic environment where bacteria and fungi could not function, halting all processes of decay. The result was that organic materials, which vanish from almost every other archaeological site on Earth, survived here in breathtaking, almost impossible detail. This was the key that unlocked a world everyone thought was lost forever. What emerged from the ice was nothing short of a museum of the ancient steppes. The most immediate and haunting discovery was the bodies themselves. These were not mere skeletons. The Scythian chieftains and their companions were found with their skin, hair, and internal organs astonishingly intact. Most remarkably, their intricate tattoos were preserved with perfect clarity. One of the most famous figures, a powerful chieftain now known as the Ice Maiden, though later determined to be a male warrior, was covered in elaborate tattoos depicting fantastical animals locked in combat: griffins, deer with elaborate antlers, and powerful cats. These were not simple markings, they were masterpieces of body art, deeply symbolic and likely denoting status, achievements, and spiritual beliefs. The ice had preserved not just a body, but a personal canvas, a story written on skin that we can still read today. But the human remains were only part of the story. The permafrost also safeguarded the complete context of their lives and deaths. Archaeologists found entire horses, sacrificed to accompany their owners into the afterlife. Their hides, manes, tails, and even the elaborate felt saddles and decorated bridles they wore still perfectly preserved. They uncovered enormous, woven woolen carpets with vibrant, complex designs, some of the oldest ever found. There were finely carved wooden furniture, delicate felt hangings depicting elaborate scenes, and even a portable yurt, giving us a complete picture of the mobile, sophisticated dwellings of these nomadic people. Perhaps most touchingly, they found small containers of coriander seeds and cannabis, along with intricate stands for inhaling the smoke, pointing to ritualistic and spiritual practices that were previously only hinted at in the writings of their Greek contemporaries, like Herodotus. The artifacts from the Pazyryk tombs do more than just show us what the Scythians owned. They reveal a culture of astonishing artistry and far-reaching connections. The style of the tattoos, the designs on the carpets, and the motifs on the horse trappings show a unique animalistic art style, a Scytho-Siberian tradition that swept across the steppe. Yet, woven into this distinct identity are clear threads of influence from the great sedentary empires they interacted with. there are objects that show the influence of Achaemenid Persia in their motifs and craftsmanship. Some textiles and designs suggest trade or contact with the great civilizations of China, and the discovery of a pristine Greek Hellenistic woolen tapestry depicting a detailed scene of a goddess and a horseman is concrete proof of trade routes that stretched all the way from the Black Sea Greek colonies to the heart of Siberia. These nomads were not isolated barbarians, they were key players in a vast, ancient network of exchange. Ultimately, the frozen tombs of Pazyryk provide a profoundly intimate window into the spiritual world of these nomadic people. The care taken in the burials, the sacrifice of prized horses, the inclusion of food, cannabis, and all the comforts of home speaks to a complex belief in an afterlife that mirrored their own. They were sent on their journey equipped for eternity. The permafrost and accidental archaeologist did more than just preserve objects, it preserved intention. It saved the profound respect they had for their dead, the love for their animals, and the incredible skill of their hands. In the silent, frozen darkness of those Siberian tombs, the vibrant, dynamic, and powerful culture of the Scythian nomads was kept safe, waiting for a time when we could finally look upon their world not as a mystery, but as a preserved reality. While the slow sinking of Baiae and the frozen tombs of Pazyryk offer dramatic stories of preservation, some of history's most compelling time capsules were created not by dramatic cataclysms, but by something far simpler and far more common: being forgotten. For centuries, the city of Tenia existed more in the realm of myth than of history, a place mentioned in ancient texts like a whispered rumor. Greek legends spoke of its founding by Trojan prisoners of war brought to the Peloponnese after the fall of Troy, a fascinating origin story for a Greek city that suggested a unique and blended cultural identity from its very beginning. It was said to have grown wealthy and powerful, but its physical location remained a mystery, a ghost on the map that many scholars doubted had ever existed outside of poetry. That all changed in 2018 when a team of Greek archaeologists, led by Dr. Elena Korka, who had been searching for the city for decades, finally made a breakthrough, uncovering not just a few scattered ruins, but an entire city that had been preserved by the gentle, patient hand of oblivion. What makes Tenia's story so different from the ash-buried cities or the sunken ports is its method of preservation. There was no volcanic eruption, no earthquake, no sudden flood. Instead, after thriving during the Hellenistic and Roman periods, the city was gradually abandoned, likely due to a combination of economic shifts and the destructive raids of Gothic invaders in the 4th century AD. As its inhabitants drifted away to more secure locations, nature simply moved in. Over the centuries, layers of soil accumulated, and vegetation took root over the empty streets and collapsed homes. This slow, natural burial acted as a perfect protective blanket. It shielded the city's remains from later builders who might have looted its stone for new projects, and it protected delicate artifacts from being scattered by plows or eroded by wind and rain. The very obscurity that made Tenia vanish from history is precisely what kept it safe for archaeology, creating a time capsule through neglect rather than disaster. The excavations have revealed a city that was far more than a myth. It was a thriving and surprisingly wealthy community. Archaeologists have uncovered well-built houses with sturdy stone foundations, sophisticated drainage systems, and rooms organized around central courtyards. But the true testimony to Tenia's prosperity lies in the smaller finds. They have discovered hoards of coins, not just a few scattered pieces, but large collections spanning several centuries from the early Hellenistic period through the Roman era. The quantity and quality of these coins suggest a robust, monetized economy and a population engaged in vibrant commerce. Exquisite jewelry has also been unearthed, including gold rings and delicate earrings, pointing to citizens who could afford luxuries and valued personal adornment. These weren't the remains of a struggling village. This was a confident, affluent city. Perhaps the most compelling evidence supporting the ancient legends has come from the cemeteries. The tombs excavated around Tenya are remarkably elaborate, built with fine masonry and containing a rich array of grave goods. This in itself speaks to wealth, but the story gets even more interesting. The burial practices show a fascinating blend of traditions. Some graves are distinctly Greek in their style and offerings, while others contain artifacts and follow customs that are clearly Roman. This cultural fusion perfectly aligns with the city's legendary Trojan origins. Founded by outsiders, Tenya would have always maintained a unique identity, a blend of its purported Anatolian heritage and its surrounding Greek culture. When the Romans later dominated the region, they added a third layer to this cultural mosaic. The graves of Tenya are like a historical palimpsest, each layer revealing a community that was adept at absorbing influences and thriving within multiple cultural spheres. This verification of the mythical foundation story is one of the most significant aspects of the discovery. For a long time, the story of Trojan prisoners building a city in Greece was considered just that, a story, an etiological myth created to explain the name of a later town. The physical evidence from Tenya now lends powerful credibility to those ancient tales. It suggests that these legends often contain kernels of historical truth, memories of population movements, and cultural interactions that were passed down through generations. Tenya's existence validates the historical record in a way that few discoveries can, bridging the gap between the epic poetry of Homer and the tangible reality of archaeology. Furthermore, the city's location provides crucial insight into its historical role. Situated between the major powerful cities of Corinth and Argos on the narrow isthmus that connects the Peloponnese to mainland Greece, Tenya was perfectly positioned to control trade routes. It wasn't an isolated backwater, it was a strategic commercial hub. The wealth found in its ruins likely flowed from its ability to tax and facilitate the movement of goods between these two important centers. It probably also benefited from agriculture in the surrounding plains and perhaps from local quarries. Its prosperity was built on its geographic importance, a fact that was lost to history until its rediscovery allowed archaeologists to piece together its place in the ancient economic network. The story of Tenya is a powerful reminder that not all time capsules require a catastrophe. Sometimes the most effective preserver of history is simply being left alone. While Pompeii shows us a single day in 79 AD, Tenya shows us centuries of gradual development, prosperity, and change. Its silent, gradual burial under earth and forgetfulness saved it from the recycling of stone and the destruction of later settlements, allowing us to see a city that evolved from its legendary Trojan origins into a wealthy Roman-era hub. It stands as a magnificent testament to the idea that sometimes the best way to save something for the future is for the world to completely lose its address. While the rediscovery of Tenya proved the power of myth and patient archaeology, another sunken city offers a glimpse into a past so remote its very existence was unimaginable until recently. Imagine a city so ancient that it predates the glory of classical Athens by over 2,000 years, a thriving Bronze Age community whose streets were walked by people using tools of stone and copper. Now imagine that entire city not as a collection of scattered foundations, but as a complete urban plan, its walls still standing, its tombs undisturbed, its streets still leading from square to home, all lying just beneath the surface of the sea. This is not a fantasy, this is Akrotiri, a settlement dating back over 5,000 years, making it the oldest known submerged city in the world. Its discovery off the coast of southern Greece rewrote our understanding of early maritime civilization, proving that complex urban life at sea began far earlier than anyone had ever dared to dream. The preservation of Pavlopteri is a story of a sudden geological betrayal followed by millennia of aquatic guardianship. The city was likely founded on a stable, attractive stretch of coastline, its inhabitants drawn to the protected bay and the opportunities for trade and fishing. Then, at some point around 1000 BC, the ground beneath it gave way. The geology of the region is intensely active, crisscrossed with fault lines. It is believed that a series of powerful earthquakes caused the land to liquefy and subside, dropping the city and a large section of the coastline beneath the waves in a single, catastrophic event. This sudden submergence was the tragedy for its inhabitants, but for archaeology it was a gift. The sea rushed in, covering the city in a layer of protective sand and sediment. This underwater blanket sealed the ruins off from the oxygen and human activity that destroys most ancient sites, creating a pristine time capsule on the seafloor. What makes Pavlopteri so exceptionally valuable is its breathtaking completeness. Most terrestrial sites from this period, the early Bronze Age, offer only fragments, a few post holes, a section of wall, a scatter of pottery. We are left to guess at the overall layout of a village, let alone a town. Pavlopteri offers none of that guesswork. From above, the entire city plan is visible. Archaeologists have mapped a sophisticated network of streets, defining at least 15 separate buildings, a central public square, and 2 prominent tombs, all covering an area of over 9 acres. We can see how the city was organized, how people moved from their homes to communal spaces, and how they separated their living areas from their places of burial. This isn't just a collection of artifacts. It is a frozen, 3-dimensional blueprint of a 3,500-year-old community, offering a clarity of understanding that is simply unavailable from any other site of comparable age. The underwater environment has acted as a perfect conservator for details that vanish on land. The gentle sedimentation has preserved the foundations of walls to their original height in many places, allowing us to understand the size and shape of the structures. But more importantly, the seafloor has safeguarded the mundane, everyday objects that reveal the true texture of life. Surveys of the site have uncovered thousands of artifacts lying exactly where they were left. There are large ceramic storage jars known as pithoi that once held olive oil, grain, and wine. There are simpler clay pots and cups used for daily meals. Stone tools lie alongside more advanced bronze blades, marking a society in transition between technologies. By studying the distribution of these objects, archaeologists can begin to understand the function of different buildings, identifying which were homes, which were workshops, and which might have been used for storage or trade. The true revelation of Pavlopteri, however, is what it tells us about the maritime prowess of these prehistoric people. The city's layout itself is a testament to a society built around the sea. Its streets appear to have been designed with water access in mind, and the discovery of stone anchors suggests a harbor area where boats would have been moored. This was not a simple fishing village. The sheer volume and variety of pottery found at the site, including styles that originate from other islands in the Aegean, provide clear evidence that Pavlopteri was a player in a much wider trading network. These early Greeks were not isolated. They were building boats capable of open water travel, exchanging goods and ideas across significant distances, and using their coastal location to generate wealth and connection. Pavlopteri forces us to push back the timeline of complex Mediterranean seafaring by centuries, revealing a Bronze Age world that was far more interconnected and sophisticated than previously believed. Its discovery also serves as a powerful beacon for future exploration. Found in just 10 feet of water and easily accessible to snorkelers, Akrotiri proves that other ancient worlds may lie hidden just offshore, waiting for a curious swimmer or a shift in the sand to reveal them. Coastal areas have always been attractive places for humans to settle, and as sea levels have risen and coastlines have shifted since the last ice age, it is statistically certain that countless other sites now lie beneath the waves. Akrotiri is a thrilling reminder that the greatest chapters of human history are not all buried under deep desert sands or dense jungle canopies. Some of them are right there, shimmering just below the surface of the familiar blue sea, inviting us to look down and discover what else has been lost to the waves. While the names Pompeii and Herculaneum echo through history as the primary victims of Vesuvius, the eruption's reach extended far beyond these urban centers, ensnaring a collection of smaller, yet equally revealing, communities in its devastating embrace. To focus solely on the two famous cities is to see only part of the picture. It is by exploring the preserved villages of Oplontes and Stabii that we gain a fuller, richer understanding of the diverse tapestry of life that flourished on the Bay of Naples. These sites were not merely smaller versions of Pompeii, they served distinct purposes for the Roman elite, and their exceptional preservation offers a complementary narrative, one of luxury, leisure, and breathtaking artistry frozen in the same catastrophic moment. Let's begin with Oplontes, which was likely not a standalone town but a wealthy suburb of Pompeii, a place where the most affluent members of society built their spectacular seaside retreats. The crown jewel of this area is the Villa Poppaea, an opulent residence so grand that it is believed to have belonged to Emperor Nero's second wife. Stepping into this villa is an overwhelming sensory experience even today. The walls are not merely painted, they are alive with some of the most sophisticated and vibrant frescoes to survive from the ancient world. Artists employed a technique known as architectural trompe-l'oeil, creating the illusion of windows opening onto fantastical gardens, columns receding into the distance, and intricate foam marble panels so realistic you feel compelled to touch them. The villa was designed to blend the indoors with the outdoors seamlessly, featuring large, airy rooms that opened onto a massive swimming pool and sprawling gardens adorned with sculptures and fountains. This was a place of ultimate relaxation and sophisticated entertainment, a private sanctuary where power and beauty were on magnificent display, showcasing a level of domestic luxury that even the finest homes in Pompeii could scarcely match. Just a short distance along the coast, the ancient town of Stabii presents a different facet of elite Roman life. Before the eruption, Stabii was already a renowned resort destination, celebrated for its salubrious climate and its stunning panoramic views of the bay. Rather than a dense urban grid, the area was dotted with numerous large villas, each perched on the cliffs to maximize the vista. These were not permanent residences but vacation homes, where wealthy Romans from the capital would retreat to escape the summer heat and the pressures of city life. The villas of Stabii, such as the Villa Ariana and the Villa San Marco, are architectural marvels of leisure. They feature incredibly long colonnaded promenades for evening strolls, expansive terraces for outdoor dining while watching the sunset over the water, and private bath complexes for health and relaxation. The discovery of medical instruments in some villas suggests that Stabii may have also been a center for convalescence, combining the benefits of its climate with the comforts of extreme wealth. The preservation of these sites provides archaeologists with a priceless opportunity for comparative study. By examining Oplontes, Stabii, Pompeii, and Herculaneum together, we can construct a nuanced model of how different Roman communities prepared for and ultimately succumbed to the disaster. The evidence suggests a stark class divide in the eruption's timeline. In populous Pompeii, the chaotic, crowded scenes of flight speak to a delayed reaction, with many residents succumbing to the pyroclastic surges only after the initial ashfall. In Herculaneum, the proximity to the volcano meant a much swifter, more violent end. But in the luxurious villas of Oplontes and Stabii, there is a telling absence of most human remains and valuable small objects. This indicates that the wealthy elite, with their resources and perhaps better information networks, had the means to flee much earlier in the event. Their villas were found largely emptied of portable wealth, suggesting they escaped with their most prized possessions, leaving behind only their immovable property, their stunning architecture and art to be preserved. These lesser-known sites fundamentally expand the story of the eruption from a tragedy affecting two cities to a regional cataclysm that reshaped an entire way of life. They remind us that Vesuvius did not just preserve urban centers, it preserved an entire cultural landscape of leisure, privilege, and agricultural production. The villas were supported by vast farm estates that covered the surrounding slopes, and the eruption also buried these agricultural holdings, preserving root cavities of vineyards and olive groves that tell us about the rural economy that sustained the urban and resort towns. The story of 79 AD is not complete without acknowledging this broader context. Oplontes and Stabii offer a quieter, more refined, but equally poignant counterpoint to the bustling streets of Pompeii and the harrowing shoreline of Herculaneum. They complete the portrait of a sophisticated society that, across its entire social and geographic spectrum, from the merchant to the emperor, was utterly transformed in a single, earth-shattering day. While the dramatic stories of volcanic eruptions and sudden sinkings capture our imagination, there is another, more patient and pervasive force at work in the creation of accidental time capsules, climate itself. The long-term weather patterns of a region, its relentless heat, its penetrating cold, or its persistent dampness, can act as a silent, global curator of history, meticulously selecting which artifacts and remains will withstand the ravages of time. This isn't about a single catastrophic event. It's about the persistent, ambient conditions that can either accelerate decay to dust or press pause on it for millennia. It's the reason we can read a piece of Egyptian papyrus from 4,000 years ago, but have almost no written records from the Celtic tribes of Western Europe. The survival of our past is, to a startling degree, a lottery of latitude and landscape, a matter of which environments had the right chemistry to become nature's archivists. Consider the incredible power of aridity. In the vast, rainless deserts of Egypt, Peru, and Western China, the primary agent of destruction, moisture, is almost entirely absent. The dry, baking air acts like a giant, natural dehydrator, pulling water out of organic materials at an astonishing rate. Without moisture, the bacteria and fungi that cause decay and rot simply cannot survive. This is why the deserts of Egypt have yielded such an unparalleled treasure trove. It's not just the intentionally mummified bodies of pharaohs. The climate itself mummifies everything. Delicate papyrus scrolls containing everything from tax records to love poems survive intact because the papyrus fibers never get wet enough to rot. Baskets, linen clothing, leather sandals, and even leftover food like dates and bread have been found in ancient trash heaps, looking as if they were discarded yesterday. The desert doesn't discriminate. It preserves the mundane along with the magnificent, offering us a complete, unvarnished picture of daily life that would have otherwise vanished completely. On the opposite end of the spectrum, but with a similarly preserving effect, is the intense, perpetual cold found in high mountain ranges and polar regions. In these frozen environments, the cold itself is the preservative. It acts as nature's ultimate deep freezer, slowing biological and chemical processes to a near standstill. In the high Andes, as we've seen, the bodies of Inca children sacrificed centuries ago were freeze-dried by the combination of cold air and intense ultraviolet radiation, their skin, organs, and clothing remaining almost perfectly intact. In the Siberian permafrost, the frozen tombs of the Scythians safeguarded intricate tattoos on skin and brilliantly colored carpets of wool. The ice creates an anaerobic environment, sealing out oxygen and preventing the growth of destructive microorganisms. This kind of preservation is so effective that scientists can now recover and analyze ancient DNA and pathogens from these remains, unlocking secrets of human migration and disease that were once thought to be lost forever. Then there are the waterlogged environments, peat bogs, deep lakes, and oxygen-starved seabeds where a lack of oxygen, rather than a lack of water, performs the miracle. When organic materials are submerged in stagnant, low-oxygen water, the bacteria that require oxygen to break things down are shut down. In their place, different chemical processes take over. In the acidic, tannin-rich waters of northern European peat bogs, the conditions are perfect for tanning skin and preserving human bodies with such fidelity that we can see the stubble on a man's chin and the contents of his last meal. Underwater, as with the sunken cities of Thonis-Heracleion and Akrotiri, the sediment that settles over ruins creates a protective seal, safeguarding wooden ship hulls, delicate papyrus, and woven textiles from the erosive power of currents and the destructive hunger of marine organisms. In these silent, dark worlds, time effectively stops, and objects that would have dissolved into nothingness on land are granted a form of immortality. This climatic lottery has a profound and sometimes distorting effect on the historical record. It means that we know an immense amount about ancient Egyptians because their dry climate saved almost everything they made, from grand statues to grocery lists. Conversely, we know comparatively little about contemporary cultures in tropical, humid regions like the Amazon or Southeast Asia, where organic materials, wood, textiles, even bone can decompose in a matter of decades. A civilization could be immensely sophisticated, with complex social structures and rich artistic traditions, but if it thrived in a rainforest, its legacy might be reduced to a handful of stone tools and pottery shards. This doesn't mean those cultures were less advanced. It simply means their environment was less forgiving to the physical evidence of their achievements. As historians and archaeologists, we must constantly remember that the picture we have of the past is not a complete album, but a collection of snapshots from places that happened to win the environmental lottery, reminding us to approach the historical narrative with humility and an awareness of its inherent gaps. Yet the forces that create these remarkable windows into the past are not wielded by nature alone. Human beings, through our own conflicts, choices, and collapses, have proven to be equally powerful, if unintentional, preservationists. We often think of cataclysms as volcanic eruptions or earthquakes, but the sudden silence following war or the slow, mysterious abandonment of a great city can act with the same freezing effect, sealing a moment in time just as completely as any layer of volcanic ash. These human-made cataclysms, the product of societal failure, conflict, or simply a collective decision to walk away, create a different kind of time capsule, one that often preserves not just objects, but the very reasons for a civilization's end. Consider the enigmatic story of Cahokia. Located just across the Mississippi River from what is now St. Louis, this was the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, a thriving metropolis of the Mississippian culture that at its peak around 1100 AD was home to 10 to 20,000 people. Its skyline was dominated by enormous earthen mounds, including the monumental Monk's Mound, a 10-story platform larger at its base than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The city was a hub of trade, ceremony, and political power, with a complex society supported by sophisticated agriculture. And then, by the year 1400, it was completely empty. The reasons remain one of North America's greatest archaeological mysteries. There is no evidence of a conquering army, no layer of ash from a volcano. The leading theories point to a slower, more insidious human and environmental catastrophe, perhaps climate change caused by a prolonged drought that collapsed their agricultural system, or perhaps overpopulation and resource depletion leading to social unrest and the breakdown of the political order. Whatever the cause, the people simply left. This abandonment, this human cataclysm of departure, became the city's savior. Unlike European cities built and rebuilt upon the same land for millennia, Cahokia was never resettled. Later, indigenous groups who moved into the region regarded the silent, grass-covered mounds with reverence and mystery, choosing not to build upon them. European settlers, when they arrived centuries later, largely ignored the area for agriculture or development. This lack of subsequent human interference is what preserved Cahokia in a way that few ancient urban centers have been. The mounds, though eroded by time, never had their soil carted away for construction projects. The plazas and residential zones were never paved over for parking lots. The site was left to slumber, a time capsule of a lost indigenous civilization, protected not by mud or water, but by centuries of obscurity and a lack of interest from those who came after. It was a preservation born from forgetting, a world away in the warm, crystal-clear waters of what is now known as Chuuk Lagoon in Micronesia. A very different kind of human cataclysm created an underwater museum of a more modern and violent kind. During the Second World War, this lagoon served as a key anchorage for the Imperial Japanese Navy, a seemingly impregnable forward base. In February 1944, the United States launched Operation Hailstone, a devastating two-day aerial assault that caught the Japanese fleet entirely by surprise. The result was carnage. Over 40 Japanese ships and hundreds of aircraft were sent to the bottom of the lagoon in a matter of hours, a crushing blow from which the Japanese fleet never truly recovered. The violent, sudden nature of this attack is what created the time capsule. Ships sank quickly, many with their crews still aboard and their cargo holds still full. The warm tropical waters, while supporting coral growth, also created an environment that preserved the metal hulls of the ships remarkably well. The lagoon became a massive naval graveyard, a snapshot of a fleet frozen in a single, terrible moment of defeat. Today, Truk Lagoon is a world-renowned destination for wreck divers who can explore an entire battlefield held in suspension. They can swim past anti-aircraft guns still pointing towards the surface, peer into holds filled with trucks, tanks, and Zero fighter planes, and see personal effects like bottles, china, and even human remains, all resting where they fell over 75 years ago. This is not a site of gradual decay. It is a moment of violent loss preserved by the sea that claimed it. The catastrophe of war became the agent of conservation. These two examples, one of peaceful abandonment, one of violent destruction, fundamentally expand our understanding of what a time capsule can be. They show us that preservation is not always a story of nature's fury overwhelming human civilization. Sometimes it is the story of human civilization overwhelming itself through war, poor resource management, or societal collapse. The resulting silence, whether it is the eerie quiet of Cahokia's empty plazas or the profound stillness of a shipwreck on the ocean floor, acts as a protective seal. These sites are saved from the recycling of materials, the erosion of memory, and the constant churn of rebuilding that defines most inhabited places. They are, in a tragic paradox, protected by the very events that ended them. Human history, it seems, is often most faithfully saved not in its moments of triumph, but in its moments of tragedy and failure, offering us sobering, powerful lessons etched not in stone, but in silence and rust. The incredible survival of these cities and artifacts isn't just a matter of luck. It's a precise and often brutal science. At its core, preservation is a race against decay, a process driven by microorganisms like bacteria and fungi that break down organic material. For something to survive centuries or millennia, these tiny agents of destruction must be stopped in their tracks, and cataclysmic events are uniquely, violently effective at doing just that. The secret lies in creating an environment that is instantly and completely hostile to decay, and nature has several powerful methods for achieving this. One of the most effective is the rapid creation of an anaerobic environment, meaning one devoid of oxygen. Many of the destructive microbes that consume wood, cloth, food, and even human tissue are aerobic. They need oxygen to live. A volcanic eruption is a master of this technique. When Mount Vesuvius erupted, it didn't just dump ash. It unleashed a torrent of superheated gas, pumice, and fine volcanic glass that buried everything in a thick, smothering blanket. This layer sealed the cities off from the air, instantly cutting off the oxygen supply. Without it, aerobic bacteria died off, and the process of decomposition simply halted. This is why wooden doors, loaves of bread, and intricate frescoes in Pompeii could survive, looking almost as they did on that fateful day. It's a form of natural mummification on a city-wide scale, where the very thing that killed also protected. Water can perform a similar miracle, but through a different chemical pathway. In the case of the sunken city of Thonis-Heracleion or the bog bodies of northern Europe, submersion in water is key. However, it's not just any water. Stagnant, sediment-rich water is ideal because it quickly becomes anoxic, depleted of dissolved oxygen. As organic matter in the water itself decays, it uses up the available oxygen, creating an environment where only anaerobic bacteria can survive. But even these bacteria are often thwarted. In the cold, acidic waters of a peat bog, the sphagnum moss releases sphagnum and humic acid, compounds that tan skin and leather, much like the process used to make a pair of shoes, effectively pickling the bodies and preventing bacterial growth. Underwater, the fine silt that settles over a sunken city acts as a physical barrier, protecting artifacts from currents and scavengers while maintaining that crucial oxygen-free seal. Extreme cold is nature's ultimate deep freezer, and it works by dramatically slowing down all molecular activity. In the high Andes or the Siberian permafrost, the bitter cold doesn't just discourage bacterial growth, it virtually stops it. Biological processes, including decomposition, are chemical reactions, and cold temperatures slow these reactions to a crawl. Ice crystals that form within tissues can also dehydrate cells, further preventing microbial activity. This cryogenic preservation is so effective that it can preserve not just skin and hair, but cellular structures, proteins, and even DNA for thousands of years. This allows scientists to study the genetics of the Inca ice mummies or the diet of a Scythian chieftain from the contents of his stomach, details that would be utterly lost in any other environment. Another fascinating preservative agent is mineral saturation. This is often a secondary process that occurs after an object is already buried. When mineral-rich groundwater percolates through a site, it can gradually replace organic materials molecule by molecule with stone, a process known as permineralization. This is how petrified wood is formed. While this doesn't preserve the original organic material, it does create a perfect stony replica of it, capturing incredible details like tree ring patterns or the cellular structure of bone. In some cases, minerals can also stabilize objects. The volcanic ash that buried Pompeii, for instance, is rich in minerals that help to solidify and maintain the shapes of objects even as their organic cores decayed away, leaving the haunting voids that were later filled with plaster to create the famous casts. Today, our understanding of these scientific processes is the key that unlocks these time capsules without destroying them. Modern archaeology is less about digging with a shovel and more about analyzing with a laser. Technologies like LiDAR allow us to map entire buried cities from the air without moving a single stone. Ground-penetrating radar can reveal the outlines of structures deep underground. And when we do excavate, we do so with the precision of surgeons, often in laboratory-like conditions. We can now perform DNA analysis on millennia-old bones to trace ancestry and migration patterns. CT scanners let us peer inside mummies and sealed containers without ever unwrapping them or breaking the seal. 3D laser scanning creates perfect digital replicas of everything from a single artifact to an entire excavation site, allowing for endless study and virtual reconstruction long after the original may have been reburied for its own protection. This scientific toolbox transforms these sites from mere curiosities into vast databases of the ancient world, where every grain of pollen, every isotope in a tooth, and every strand of textile has a story to tell, all thanks to the violent, beautiful, and precise science of preservation. But the incredible scientific value of these preserved remains comes with a profound and deeply human responsibility. These are not just artifacts, they were once living, breathing people with families, dreams, and cultures that may still have living descendants today. The haunting plaster casts of Pompeii, the leathery skin of Toland man, the serene face of the Inca maiden, they all force us to confront a difficult question. In our quest for knowledge, where do we draw the line between scientific study and sacred respect? This ethical dilemma sits at the very heart of modern archaeology, transforming it from a simple treasure hunt into a nuanced dialogue between the past and the present. Different cultures around the world hold vastly different beliefs about the proper treatment of the dead. In many Western scientific traditions, there has historically been a tendency to treat human remains as objects of study, valuable data points in the grand narrative of human history. They were measured, analyzed, and often displayed in museum cases for public education. Yet, for many indigenous and First Nations communities, this approach is a profound desecration. Their worldview often holds that disturbing the dead disrupts their spiritual journey and brings misfortune to the living. For them, these ancient individuals are not specimens, they are ancestors, and they deserve the same dignity and rest as anyone recently deceased. There is no single, universal answer, which means archaeologists must navigate a complex web of cultural sensitivities with immense care. In response to these challenges, a robust set of ethical guidelines has emerged over recent decades, fundamentally shifting how the profession operates. The cornerstone of this modern approach is consultation and collaboration with descendant communities. This means that before a single shovel touches the ground near a burial site, archaeologists now strive to engage with groups who have a cultural or genetic link to the remains. This isn't just a formality, it's a genuine partnership. Community elders and knowledge keepers are brought into the process from the very beginning, helping to determine if excavation should even proceed, and if so, guiding how it should be done respectfully. They might advise on specific rituals to be performed before, during, and after excavation, or help decide what can be studied and what should be reburied. This collaborative model acknowledges that scientific inquiry does not trump cultural belief, but rather, the two must find a way to work in concert. The issue of public display is perhaps the most publicly visible ethical battleground. Seeing a human being from the distant past laid out in a glass case can be a powerful, emotional experience for a museum visitor, creating a direct and visceral connection to history. But is it right? Many institutions are now rethinking this practice. Some have chosen to remove human remains from open display entirely, or to offer them only in specially curated, context-rich exhibitions that emphasize respect and education over spectacle. Signage often now warns visitors of the sensitive nature of the content, allowing people to make a conscious choice. In the case of the Pompeii casts, many argue that their display is a solemn memorial to a human tragedy, a way of honoring the victims by ensuring they are never forgotten. For the bog bodies, their careful presentation can tell a story of ritual and belief. The key is intentionality. Display must always be for a clear educational purpose and handled with the utmost reverence, never as a mere curiosity. Ultimately, this ethical framework is not about halting science, it's about enriching it. When we treat these individuals with respect, we often learn more meaningful stories. By working with descendants, archaeologists can gain insights into cultural practices that they might otherwise misinterpret. A strange object buried with a body might be explained by an oral tradition passed down for generations. A particular burial posture might be understood not as strange, but as deeply significant to a specific spiritual belief. This process turns the subjects of study back into people with names, stories, and dignity. It allows us to honor them not by leaving them entirely alone, but by listening to what they have to tell us in a way that is respectful, collaborative, and humane. In doing so, we ensure that the incredible gift of these accidental time capsules is used not just to advance knowledge, but to heal, connect, and deepen our shared understanding of what it means to be human across the vast expanse of time. And as we stand amidst the ruins and relics of these ancient, preserved worlds, it's a thrilling thought to realize that the age of discovery is far from over. In fact, we are poised on the brink of what may be the most revolutionary era in archaeology yet to come. An era where the tools of the future will allow us to peer into the deepest, darkest corners of our planet to find the past. The quest for these accidental time capsules is accelerating, driven by a powerful combination of cutting-edge technology and the unintended consequences of our changing climate. The next great discovery, the one that could fundamentally rewrite a chapter of human history, might not even be on our radar yet, waiting silently in the permafrost, the desert sands, or the abyssal plains of the deep ocean for its moment to return to the light. One of the most active frontiers in this search is also one of the most concerning: the world's melting ice. Glaciers and permafrost that have been frozen solid for thousands of years are now receding at an alarming rate due to global warming. While an environmental crisis, this thaw is revealing a stunning array of organic artifacts that have been locked away for millennia. In the high passes of the Alps and the Andes, hikers and scientists are already finding perfectly preserved arrows, leather quivers, and even the remains of ancient hunters, all released from their icy tombs. But this is likely just the beginning. As the ice continues to melt, we can expect to uncover entire landscapes lost to time. We might find the frozen remains of prehistoric mammals with their stomach contents intact, or the campsites of early humans who chased game across now vanished ice bridges. Each find is a snapshot of a world long gone, but the Holy Grail would be the discovery of a preserved settlement, a seasonal hunting camp, or even a sacred site, frozen in place at the edge of a glacier, offering a complete picture of life during the last great ice age. Beneath the waves, another technological revolution is underway. The deep ocean has always been the final, great unexplored frontier on Earth, hiding countless secrets in its crushing darkness. Until recently, we simply lacked the ability to search it effectively. Now, with the advent of sophisticated autonomous underwater vehicles, advanced sonar mapping systems, and remotely operated vehicles equipped with high-definition cameras and delicate manipulator arms, we are beginning to scan the seafloor with unprecedented clarity. These underwater drones can methodically survey vast areas, identifying anomalies that could be the geometric shapes of sunken cities or the long, straight lines of buried walls. This technology is what led to the discovery of Thonis-Heracleion, and it is almost certain to find others. The most tantalizing targets are the submerged settlements from the last glacial period, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower. The coastlines that ancient humans walked and lived upon are now drowned continental shelves. Somewhere out there, beneath the sediment of the North Sea or off the coast of Florida, lie the remains of entire communities that thrived on land that is now underwater, waiting for a robotic submersible to drift over them and send a signal back to the surface. The world's remote deserts, too, hold immense potential for future revelations. Vast tracts of the Sahara, the Gobi, and the Arabian Desert remain virtually unexplored by archaeologists, their harsh conditions making extensive survey work incredibly difficult. However, new satellite imaging technology is changing that. Satellites equipped with synthetic aperture radar and multispectral scanners can peer through the sand to detect subtle differences in soil density and moisture content, revealing the buried outlines of walls, roads, and even entire cities that are completely invisible to the naked eye. This space archaeology has already identified thousands of potential sites, from forgotten Roman forts in Britain to lost medieval cities in Cambodia. As these techniques become more refined, it is only a matter of time before they pinpoint a major urban center of a previously unknown civilization, a city that vanished into the dunes not from a sudden cataclysm, but from a slow encroachment of sand perfectly sealing it for centuries. But our future discoveries won't only be of the ancient past. We are, right now, in the process of creating the accidental time capsules of tomorrow. Modern cataclysmic events, though tragic, will leave behind their own preserved records for future archaeologists to decipher. Imagine, 1,000 years from now, an archaeologist exploring the sealed control room of a nuclear power plant, its contents frozen in a moment of crisis, much like the rooms of Pompeii. Or consider the potential of climate-related preservation. A coastal city abandoned after a catastrophic hurricane and slowly buried by silt and sand could become the next Pompeii, its skyscrapers and subways offering a perfectly preserved cross-section of 21st century life. Even something as simple as a landfill with its layers of compressed trash could become an invaluable time capsule, preserving the everyday detritus of our consumer society in an anaerobic environment for millennia, telling a story of our culture that no history book ever could. This relentless pursuit, this drive to find and understand these frozen moments in time, is about more than just filling museums or rewriting textbooks. It is a fundamental part of the human experience, a deep-seated curiosity to understand where we came from and to connect with the lives of those who walked this earth before us. Every discovery, from a single tool to an entire city, is a thread that connects us to the vast tapestry of human history. It reminds us of our shared struggles, our ingenuity, our art, and our resilience in the face of disaster. The next great find is out there, hidden in plain sight or in the most remote corner of the globe, waiting for the right combination of technology, circumstance, and a curious mind to bring its story back to the world. The map is not yet finished, and the next page of history has already been written. It's just waiting for us to turn over the right stone or scan the right patch of seafloor to finally read it. From the ash-entombed streets of Pompeii to the icy peaks of the Andes, We have journeyed across continents and millennia, guided by the hauntingly beautiful paradox that the very events capable of erasing a civilization can also miraculously act as its eternal guardians. These accidental time capsules, forged in moments of unimaginable terror, have gifted us something profoundly precious, a direct, tangible connection to our shared human past. They are not merely ruins or relics, they are frozen moments, windows into worlds we thought were lost forever, allowing us to walk alongside our ancestors and witness their lives not as abstract dates in a history book, but as vibrant, breathing reality. This journey reminds us of a humbling truth about the fragility of our own existence. The bustling markets of Pompeii, the sacred rituals on Andean summits, the lively debates in a Minoan port, all were halted in an instant, a stark testament to the immense and unpredictable power of the natural world. Yet within that fragility lies an incredible story of resilience. These cataclysms did not just end stories, they preserved them, ensuring that the innovations, the artistry, the daily struggles and joys of these cultures would not be forgotten. We see this resilience in the sophisticated plumbing of Mohenjo-Daro, the maritime prowess of the Bronze Age sailors at Akrotiri, and the profound spiritual faith of the Inca. Each discovery is a message from the past, echoing the enduring human spirit to create, to adapt, and to find meaning, even in the face of the unknown. Ultimately, these preserved cities and cultures offer us more than just archaeological data. They offer perspective. They show us that while technologies change and empires rise and fall, the core human experience, our desire for community, our pursuit of beauty, our relationship with the divine, and our love for our families transcends time. The loaf of bread left in a Pompeian oven, the carefully braided hair of an Inca child, the graffiti on a Herculaneum wall, these intimate details dissolve the centuries between us, creating a powerful bond of shared humanity. They challenge us to consider what legacy we are creating and what story a future generation might uncover from our own time, should it ever be frozen in a moment. The search for these lost worlds is far from over. With every technological advance, from deep-sea drones to satellite imaging, we are peeling back layers of the earth and sea, each discovery offering a new piece of the infinite puzzle of our past. The next great time capsule is out there, waiting silently in a desert dune, under a melting glacier, or beneath the ocean's silt, ready to astonish us and rewrite the chapters of history. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through time. If these stories of resilience and discovery captivated you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing which of these time capsules resonated most with you. And if you want to join us for our next exploration into history's greatest mysteries, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.